Welcome back to Secretariat. Timing is everything. So now we're finally on the precipice of getting to the bottom of this sacred record and this sacred story. So let's move forward to June of 2012, when the hearing has finally been called for at the Ruffian Room in Laurel Park in Maryland, Laurel Racecourse. We have with us here Leonard Lusky. Leonard Lusky is Penny Chenery's confidant, and he's really the guy that orchestrated this whole thing to happen. So take us through how you built the case that finally got this done.
Well, it wasn't just one person. It was truly a team effort. You know, you talk about the Meadow team and you see all the accomplishments. It was something that many people came together. Certainly Mrs. Chenery, who said, yes, I think it's time that we try to right this wrong. Mr. Spiesler, who was so communicative of what had happened previously. Mr. Chukas, who said, sure, you know, Maryland Jockey Club's on board. It really was everyone saying, okay, let's go for this. And with all that responsibility, it was on our team to make sure we had the evidence.
So how'd you do it?
It started actually with the Disney film. We had been asked to get the original film footage by Disney for the Preakness, so that would be a part of the film. It was not a filmed aspect, it was the actual original footage. And in getting that, the clearest footage that ever was available, it really became evident you could almost hand time this, as Jack Harmon's going to tell you. And you see that this disparity is not just one of a nose or a head bob. This was 10 lengths of a difference. And how could this be? How could 39 years go by? So we analyzed the film. We brought in a lot of technical people to say, yes, the film speed, all the gobbledygook that goes along with the technical.
What kind of people are we talking about?
We had Olympic timers who came in. We had a series of different forensic film analysis done. It was all pointing to the same thing. Sandy Grossman, who was with CBS in the 1973 hearing, he provided so much information. It was boundless. I mean, we had everything we needed, and then we put it all together and put it on one big presentation.
Sounds more like an episode of Cold Case than a horse racing story. Let's turn to Jack Harmon, who has been timing Maryland races since 1976, 3 years after Secretariat's Preakness. What convinced you, or how did you make the case that that time that was posted was, in fact, too slow?
Well, when Leonard called me, he brought the tape, and we did it actually with the internet, and so I timed it like 3 times, and I got the 153 flat. I did it all 3 times, and I said, well, I think what happened was, and we measured it out through the things of the race, that the time started when the gates opened up. We think that maybe someone was in front of the beam, and the time actually starts at the marker pole. It doesn't start when they come out of the...
Explain that in better detail.
Well, see, what happens is they park the gate like 50 feet behind the marker pole where the race actually starts. That's the measurement. And what happened was, like I say, somebody was in front of it, a bird could have flew in front of it, the beam could have malfunctioned, and when the person that was timing the race on the Visumatic timer, not the teletimer, I'm the teletimer. That's the company that's in there now. And what happened was, that's when the time started. So you're talking 50 feet, and for every length of a horse is probably like 10 feet. So you're talking almost like a second and a fifth. So that's actually what we think happened. We know what happened. And I'm 110% sure that that's what happened.
Before we get to Bruce Spitzler, to make sure this was all kosher, that he agreed with all of this, Leonard, tell us how you researched finding the photographs, finding the visual evidence that really cemented this case.
Well, one of the big important things that we tried to do that hadn't been done is take the existing fractions that were recorded, at the quarter pole, the half pole, and see how they measured up. Was it a total clock malfunction? And what we found was all of them matched up perfectly except for the first one. The first quarter pole, we showed that it was closer to 23 seconds, whereas the original time was 25 seconds. And that was, we had narrowed what the field was to where the problem was. And we wanted to try to find where this quarter pole camera was. There really wasn't a quarter pole back then, and Jack was one that brought that up. They had a camera on a small pedestal right on the turn, but we couldn't find a picture. And the Baltimore Sun, for all praise to you, because we looked through 20,000 archival images and finally found one, the smoking gun. It was there, this pedestal where the camera was, that put everything into the right perspective.
So Bruce Spietzler, Senior Assistant Attorney General for the state of Maryland, you heard this case made before you. What finally convinced you that this was a valid case?
Well, first and foremost, I'm counsel to the Racing Commission, so it was the members of the Maryland Racing Commission, and there are 9 of them who heard this matter. I sit with them as their counsel and provide legal advice, and I was the one who drafted the memorandum in order that resulted from their hearing. But personally, I think some of the most compelling testimony and evidence was what Leonard just referenced, and that is, first of all, it was demonstrated, and I wasn't even aware of this, and I've been a racetrack fan for many years, having grown up just 4 blocks from Pimlico, that the race does not start when the gates come open. The race starts when the first horse crosses the beam of light that emanates from the marker pole, as Jack mentioned, in this instance, the 3/16th pole, because the race is 1 mile and 3/16. So what was so telling was that the fractions, and it was broken down digitally on film with a digital clock watch on every frame, and every frame was numbered, so you could track all of these matters, not only in regard to Secretariat's race in '73, but also Tank's Prospects race in '85, and they were stacked, shown one on top of the other, and Secretariat clearly wins against Tank's Prospect and Canonero II from the '71 race. But what was most telling was when you broke down those fractions, the fractions as recorded by the electronic timer and the fractions recorded by the clocker himself, the human clocker, and the fractions that come about from the digitalized film are precisely the same except for the first quarter mile. And in the first quarter mile, there's a 2-second variation between the electronic timer and the digitalized film. And so that, to me, was the most telling of all. And there was a bevy of evidence and testimony that was presented, and the commission concluded that this evidence was indeed overwhelming and convincing to establish that Secretariat had raced the '73 Preakness at 1:53.
So Secretariat's place in history is now codified and revised, and we'll have that perspective for you when we come back here on In the Game.